Hello, students. Let's do the problem. And it says, a nurse set up a serum IV for her patient. The following table shows the elapsed time and the amount of serum remaining in the bag. What is the slope and y-intercept of the equation that represents this situation? Okay, so there's one word here that is going to be a huge clue for you guys to decide what kind of a slope are we looking for, because look what it says, remaining. So what does that tells you? If you're looking for something that talks about remaining, then more than likely they're being taking away something. Is that right? Because that's the only way that something can remain in there, because you're taking away. And I am going to be looking for the slope, and I'm going to look for the y-intercept. Okay, so let's look at the table. Let's see if we can understand some of the information from the table. So my x is the minutes, and the y is how much serum is remaining. Is that right? So after 20 minutes, we have 145. After 40 minutes is 140. After 60 minutes, 135, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if you noticed, but the first thing that we might want to do is consider thinking about finding the rate of change. Okay? So how do I go from a 20 to a 40? Well, I need to add a 20 to that. Is that right? How about from 40 to a 60? I still need to add a 20. How about from 60 to 80? We still need to add a 20. And from 80 to 100, you still need to add a 20. So notice how my x is constant. It's increasing by 20. Is that right? Well, what about on the y? Let's look at that other side. How do I go from 145 to 140? It's not increasing, right? It's actually decreasing. And it's decreasing by 5. Very good. So I'm going to write down a -5 or a -5. 140 to 135, I'm taking away 5. From 135 to 130, I'm taking away 5. And on the last one, we're still taking away 5. So I can see the constant rate of change. Is that right? So I'm going to be finding the change of the y over the change of the x. So the y, the change of the y was a -5, or in this case, I do need to write a -5. And the change of the x is a 20. So the next question will be if I can simplify or what can I do. So we'll come back to that in a minute. I want to come back to the table. Now notice how in the x I'm adding 20. So I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to take away 20. What's 20 minus 20? 0. You know that it's not 100% sure that you will get a 0 on x all the time. But if we do, then that's going to be a huge help for all of us, right? So what is the opposite of taking away 5? Well, I'm going to add a 5 to that. And I will get 150. So what does that number represent? It says 0 minutes, 150 remaining milligrams. Is that right? So what happened to the 0 in the 150? That means that before any minutes had passed by, right? The remaining serum, it's 150. So can we think about 150 as maybe that's how much you started with? It could be, right? That's how much you start with. After that, you're taking away 5 every time. Okay? So let's think about that for a moment. So that means that my rate of change was negative 5 over 20. Can I simplify that? Simplify means, can I divide by the same numbers? Well, I can divide by 5, and that will give me negative 1 over 4. Very good. So we agree that rate of change, and I'm going to write it over here, is the same as what? Rate of change is the same as slope. Very good. So that's my slope, and this is my slope right there. So if the rate of change is negative 1 over 4, I do look at the answer choices. There's two negative 1/4. Letter A and letter C. Is that right? So who will be my y-intercept? The y-intercept, remember, is when x is 0. Let's see if you remember that. Y-intercept, it's when x is 0. And luckily for us, we found it like that without working it out. And my answer is 150. Very good. And there's only one that has 150. Okay? So we can look at the problem from that point of view with the table, but I'd rather for you to actually use the formulas for those. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of slope. So I'm going to write down y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x of 1. I'm going to choose 2 points given to me. So one of the points that I'm choosing is 20 and 145. And the second point that I'm going to choose is 40 and 140. And I'm going to write down my labels. X of 1 and y of 1 because it's the first point. X of 2 and y of 2 because that's my second point. I'm going to circle my y coordinates because that's the one that always goes on the numerator. So y sub 2 is 140 minus 145 and 40 minus 20. So 140 minus 145 is a negative 5. Very good. And 40 minus 20 is 20. If you simplify both of them by 5, I will get m equals negative 1 over 4, which is the same answer that I got earlier for rate of change. Why? Because we agreed that rate of change and slope are exactly the same. So this is the same thing as slope. Okay? What's the next thing that I need to do? Well, I want to confirm that my y-intercept, it is 150. So for that, we're going to write down the equation for the slope-intercept form. I'm going to choose one of the points. Now remember, no matter what point I choose, I should get the same answer. So I'm going to choose a big number. I'm going to choose 100 and 125. Just to prove to you that it doesn't matter the point. This is my x and 125 is my y. So my y value, I'm going to replace it with 125. M, we found it earlier, was negative 1 over 4. X is 100. And I'm going to add a b to that. Is that right? So let's continue. Now I need to work on my question. So I got 125 equals, what's negative 1/4 times 100? It's actually negative 25. Very good. Plus b. It's like saying, what's 1/4 of 100? Right? Divide 100 by 4. So I need to get rid of that negative 25. I'm going to add 25 on both sides. So my 25s are going to cancel. And I get b equals to 150. Very good. So notice how my 150 is the same 150 that I found on the table when x was 0. So you got to remember that my y-intercept, it's that coordinate when x is 0. Okay? So therefore, My answer for this, should it be letter A? Very good.